Okay, welcome everyone. Michael Stead here, founder of the Abundance Society, where we teach you how to invest and grow your money the way the rich and the wealthy do so that you can create the financial freedom and prosperity that you deserve. And welcome to the webinar today called How to Prosper Financially in Times of Economic Anarchy. Now, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for attending the webinar. I know how incredibly busy you are and that you have a lot on the go right now, and it takes a lot of commitment to set aside the time to attend these webinars and to attend classes like this. But I just want to let you know up front that it is my sole intention here today to bring you value. And I just want to let you know up front as well that today's presentation will be around 90 or so minutes in length, although I'll do my very best to make it a little bit shorter than that just so I can get you guys out of here on time. So first and foremost, please take the time just to turn off or shut down anything that's going to distract you from this presentation. So that includes everything from your email, Skype, Twitter, Facebook, your cell phone, because what I'm about to share with you today could very well be the most important hour and a half you invest in your financial education in your lifetime, because what I'm about to share with you will have a massive impact on your future, both personally and especially financially. And what I'm going to show you today is I'm going to show you how you can turn economic disaster into massive wealth for you and your family. I'm going to show you how you can take advantage of the greatest transfer of wealth that is happening right now as we speak, and I'm going to show you the one investment, the single investment you need to make right now to protect your assets and to profit wildly during the coming economic collapse. But before we get to that, I know what you must be thinking. Is it really possible to become wealthy during these chaotic times? And although it may seem very unlikely, and everyone on the news is telling you that these are terrible times, that the economy is terrible, and there's no opportunity out there, I'm here to tell you today that the answer to this question is a resounding yes, but only if you know how. It's clear that the world is changing at an unprecedented rate of speed, and with great change comes great opportunity. And this is why more millionaires were created in the Great Depression than in any other time in human history. And as you'll soon discover on this webinar and presentation, the coming economic crisis, which is fastly heading our way, will be the biggest opportunity in your lifetime to create unimaginable wealth if you take the right actions to position yourself to be on the winning side. Because here's what you need to understand. No matter how technologically advanced the human race becomes, there is one thing that we simply cannot escape from. And those are the laws that govern our universe. Now, what am I talking about here? Well, more specifically, I'm referring to Albert Einstein's law of conservation of energy, in which he said that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred from one form to another. So if that's true, and if everything around us is energy, then therefore wealth cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred from one person to another. You see, wealth wasn't destroyed in the global financial crisis in 2008, and this is a big thing that a lot of people just don't understand. It was merely transferred to other people. So my job here today is to show you how to put you on the winning side of this great transfer. So given the problems that we experienced in 2008 have not been resolved, but rather been allowed to become even larger and even more detrimental, the opportunity to become extraordinarily wealthy during these times has grown tremendously. However, like all good things, this opportunity is not going to last forever, so it is imperative that you get informed, you get educated, and you get prepared. So here's what we're going to cover today on the webinar. So first and foremost, I'm going to talk about what the real cause of the financial crisis has been and how it has been quietly lurking for the past 100 years. Secondly, we're going to talk about, should the U.S. tax the rich or cut spending in order to balance the budget? This is a major issue that's going back and forth in Congress because we can't seem to find any resolution on what is the appropriate solution in order to implement to solve this problem. So we're going to talk about that later here today. Next, we're going to talk about, is the U.S. fast becoming the next Zimbabwe? And if you're not sure what that reference entails, we're going to cover that later here today. We're going to do a case study, and I'm going to show you how you literally could have taken a one-time investment of $10,000 and literally transformed it into more than $100 million. And no, I'm not kidding when I say that, and you're going to see the power behind this principle that I'm going to share with you behind wealth accumulation. Finally, I'm going to show you how to position your assets correctly the way the rich are doing right now so that you can be on the winning side of the wealth transfer that I've been alluding to. So with that being said, let the show begin. Let's get started. Before we get started, though, I just want to share a little bit about myself and a little bit about my story so you'll get to know a little bit more about my background and why I decided to create this presentation for you here today. As I mentioned, my name is Michael Stead. I was born and raised just outside of a small town just outside of Edmonton, Alberta in Canada. I grew up in an upper middle class family, and as you can see here by this photo, this was actually taken at my lovely sister's university graduation ceremony. That's her in the cap and gown, and that's my mother and father there on the right of her, and that's me there on the left. And while I was growing up, I was taught the keys for success, and I'm sure many of you on this webinar today were taught something very, very similar as well. And it was that in order to become successful, you need to go to school, get a safe, secure job, work hard, buy a house, pay it off as quickly as possible, save your money, and if you followed this formula to a T, then you could retire blissfully happy. And when it came to things such as finances, I was taught that in order to become successful in that area of my life, you need to hire a financial advisor, invest for the long term in a diversified portfolio of mutual funds in your retirement account, RSPs if you're Canadian, or 401ks or IRAs if you live in the US, or whatever the moniker or lingo is in your home country. And while this advice made very rational sense, what happened next put a very sour taste in my mouth and a feeling of nausea in the pit of my stomach. Much like the rest of the world, in the span of about 6 months, I lost over 35% of my money in the global financial crisis. When this happened, I had no idea what was going on. So when I contacted my financial advisor to find out what had happened, he said something to the effect of, "Oh, don't worry about it. You're young and have plenty of time to recover. Just keep investing over the long term and you'll do just fine. The market goes up and the market goes down, and right now we're in a bit of a down period, but don't worry about it because everything always goes back up." So, in other words, he basically told me to keep doing the same thing that clearly wasn't working. Of course, what he didn't mention was that even though I lost a huge amount of money, he was still collecting his management fees and commissions. Sound familiar? I remember thinking to myself when this happened and when I had this experience, something isn't right here. It's just this visceral feeling that I had in the pit of my stomach that I just knew something wasn't right. And it was in this moment that I realized something that literally sent chills down my spine and made my blood run cold. I realized that I had no idea how money worked, that I was completely ignorant about what was happening in the global economy, and that I had no control over my finances. I realized that I handed all the responsibility over to someone else and was literally rolling the dice and praying that they made the right decisions with my money. I felt like a complete victim with no way of changing my future because I had absolutely no clue on how to take control over my financial destiny. But it was in this moment that I had a turning point in my life, and I simply just put my fist down and said, "You know what? Enough. I refuse to ever let this happen in my life ever again." And I decided on that very day to embark on a journey to find out how the rich and how the wealthy really invested and grew their money, because I had a sneaking suspicion in the back of my mind that I wasn't being told the truth and that the so-called financial experts didn't have my best interest at heart. And as painful as undergoing that process was, It turned out to be the best possible thing that ever could have happened to me, because what I discovered over the past 3 years of intense study and research was so profound and so life-changing that it has completely changed the direction of my life and has given me a new sense of purpose by helping to awake people to what is really going on so that they can prepare and prosper financially. More on that later, though. So now, while most people think that the financial crisis started in 2007 and 2008 when the big investment bank Lehman Brothers declared bankruptcy, the truth is that our current economic woes are a result of a secret institution that was created back in 1913, or pretty close to over 100 years ago at this point. And the institution that I'm referring to in this case, of course, is the United States Federal Reserve System. Now, while the Fed was created in 1913, the actual idea for this institution originated back in 1910 when U.S. Senator Nelson Aldrich had a privately held two-day meeting on Jekyll Island just off the coast of Georgia at a private J.P. Morgan estate. It was here that him and his friends, pictured here, investor Paul Wahlberg, Abraham Andrew, who was the Assistant Treasury Secretary, Frank Vanderlip, who was the president of the Rockefeller-led National City Bank of New York, Henry Davidson, and Benjamin Strong of J.P. Morgan. It was here that these men created the blueprint for the Federal Reserve System, which eventually became known as the Federal Reserve Act, which was passed on December 23rd, 1913. The significance behind this legislation would not only change the rules of modern finance, but the principles of a free market economy and capitalism became nothing more than an illusion. Why is this, you might be asking? Because here's what you need to understand about the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank. First off, it's not U.S., it's not federal, it has absolutely no reserves, and it's not a bank. No, as a matter of fact, it is a privately owned corporation which has private shareholders who are paid an annual dividend or profit sharing of 6% based on the interest the U.S. Treasury must pay them on money the Fed creates out of thin air and that they then loan to the U.S. government. And as you can see here, it actually says this right on the Federal Reserve's website. So, I mean, they're not even hiding this from the general public. But what's really shocking is that a lot of people really don't understand that this is happening, that this is going on right below their noses. Something else that's equally disturbing is that the Federal Reserve has never been audited, they are accountable to no one, and they are a separate entity from the U.S. government. Yet they have the power to dictate monetary policy, i.e. set interest rates, control money supply and inflation, and print the U.S. currency. Cash or Federal Reserve notes isn't money that is owned or printed by the U.S. government, but rather it is owned and printed by this private corporation. And as you can see here right on the $5 bill and all the other bills in the U.S. currency, it has their logo and it says right at the top, it says Federal Reserve note right at the top there. So again, I mean, it's plain as day what's going on, but a lot of people really just aren't seeing this happening, which is really, really unfortunate. And although it's a little bit difficult to verbalize exactly how this institution functions, the way in which the Fed operates goes a little something like this. When the United States government needs money in order to fund their operations, what they first have to do is they have to go to the Federal Reserve in order to get some money. So to keep things very, very simplistic, what they'll do is they'll go to the Federal Reserve and they'll say, you know, Mr. Federal Reserve, we need $10 billion. So the Federal Reserve says, okay, no problem. We'll sell you 10 billion US dollars. Now, in exchange for this transaction, what the U.S. government does, or what the Federal Reserve does for that matter, is that they buy $10 billion of U.S. Treasury bonds. Now, for all of you out there that don't have the financial acumen to know what a bond is, just to make it very, very simple for you to understand, a bond is simply just an IOU whereby if you borrowed $1 from someone, you promise to pay them back that dollar plus a portion of interest in the future. So if you Excuse me, guys. So if you borrowed $1, you promise to pay back, let's say, $2 in the future. Now, to make it even more simple, a bond is simply just an issuance of debt. And while this seems like a fairly simple transaction, the truth is it is far more insidious than that, because the question becomes, well, wait a second, if the US government borrows their money from the Fed at interest, where does the money come from to pay for the interest on the original loan? Well, the answer to this question is that it doesn't exist. Every year, the U.S. Treasury is forced to borrow even more money from the Fed to pay for the interest on the original loan, which creates an even bigger debt that has to be repaid in the future. This means that the U.S. government has to constantly run a budget deficit, meaning that they have to spend more than they make, in order to continually keep up paying their interest payments to an institution that is privately owned. In other words, in order for this system to survive, the U.S. has to go further and further into debt each and every year, or the entire system will collapse. And as you can see here by this next chart, that's exactly what they've done. This chart shows the U.S. national debt from 1940 to present day, and as you can see, it's just gone absolutely vertical and skyrocketed. And if the past is any indication of the future, this trend is going to get much, much worse before it gets better. So what does this all mean? Well, essentially it means that bankruptcy and defaults are literally built into the system, because eventually the interest payments on the debt become impossible to repay. This is why our economy has the constant boom and bust cycle, and when times are good, banks lend money, further expanding the money supply, which drives economic growth and development, and the economy hums along brilliantly. However, when times are bad, people default on their debts, banks contract the money supply, money and credit become scarce, and the economy comes to a grinding halt. So while the talking heads on CNBC and Fox News continue to argue over how big the next bailout package should be in order to reboot economic growth, the truth is that the debt is impossible to repay, because the U.S. government does not have the authority to print their own currency interest-free. So they are continually forced to borrow it from the Federal Reserve at interest. So this leads us to our next question. Well, wait a second. Where does the Federal Reserve get the money to loan to the U.S. government? Well, again, the answer to this question is that it doesn't exist. The Fed doesn't have any money. It doesn't have any reserves, but rather they merely create it out of thin air, which they then loan to the U.S. government at interest. So if the U.S. government was somehow able, if they could somehow pull it off, where they were able to pay off all their debt to the Federal Reserve, there would not be $1 in circulation. Because here's what you need to understand. The Federal Reserve doesn't actually print money, but rather they loan it into existence. And this is a major, major distinction that you have to understand if you really want to know exactly how this institution functions. They don't just print money out of thin air. They first loan the money out of thin air so that the government has to pay them back with interest. So to make this really simple to understand, if you borrowed $1 into existence, and it was the only dollar that existed on the entire planet, but you promised to pay back $2 in the future, well, where do you get the second dollar? Well, the answer is that you have to go back to the lender, the guy that gave you the dollar in the first place, and borrow another dollar to pay for the first one that they loaned you. So what does this mean in essence? Well, it means that money as we know it today is simply debt, and all debt is money. And that those little pieces of paper that you carry around in your pocket that you use to buy gas and groceries and go to the movies, there's simply nothing more than a promise to pay back debt in the future. And as you can see again on the $5 bill and all the other bills in the U.S. currency, it says it right on them. It says, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So it's telling you right on the bill exactly what the intention and what the use of this money is for. It's to pay back someone else's debt in the future. So as bad as this sounds, the truth is we weren't completely doomed just yet, because the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 required that 40% of all the currency they created was to be backed by gold, which put preventative measures on how much currency the Federal Reserve was able to loan to the U.S. government. Unfortunately, however, a day would come which would seal our fate forever. And it was on this day that this gentleman literally changed the rules of modern finance for the entire world. On August 15th, 1971, U.S. President Richard Nixon, without the approval of Congress and without consulting the international monetary system, he severed the U.S. dollar's relationship to gold by abolishing the Bretton Woods Agreement, which unpegged the U.S. dollar from the remaining 40% gold backing. And with the death of Bretton Woods, literally every single currency on the planet, overnight, literally overnight, became known what is called fiat currency. And essentially what this means, if you don't understand the terminology, fiat currency, those little pieces of paper that you carry around in your pocket, it simply means that they have absolutely no intrinsic value. But rather, the only value that these currencies have are the pretend value that governments decree that they have. So if you believe that the government is solvent and you believe that the government can perform its obligations, then the currency will continue to buy you goods and services. However, if you don't believe in the government and if you don't believe that the currency will buy you anything, because in all actuality there's no difference between that and monopoly money, then the currency system will fail. So, with this change in legislation, this essentially gave the Federal Reserve the ability to create as much money out of thin air as they wished, and then place the burden of debt repayment upon taxpayers like you and I around the world, which is literally selling out future generations of people by turning them into debt slaves to pay back a liability that they never created and are not responsible for. It is the largest Ponzi scheme that has ever been created, and therefore is the largest scam that has ever been created. And they are the primary reason why the global economy is on the brink of collapse, and they have been the fuel which has caused the financial crisis that we are experiencing today. But wait, there's more. As many problems as the Federal Reserve creates for the U.S. government, the problems are further expedited when you introduce the concept of fractional reserve banking. A big word, what does it mean? Well, very, very simply, I'll break it down to its core essence. Now, as you can recall earlier, this relationship between the United States government and the Federal Reserve is continually taking place day after day after day. So now the question becomes, well, what does the government do with this money once they receive it? Well, they take the money from the Federal Reserve, they then deposit it into the various branches of the government, which they then go and do some deficit spending on some public works projects, social programs, war, so on and so forth. And eventually, this money finds its way into the hands of citizens like you and I. So, to explain fractional reserve banking, and just to make this really simple for you to understand, let's use some very, very simple numbers. So let's say that you have $100, and you go and deposit that $100 into this bank here. Now, traditionally, under a 10-to-1 reserve ratio, which simply means that the banks at all times have to keep a minimum of 10% reserves in their account, what they do with your $100 is that they'll take your $100 and they'll loan out 90% of the value of your account and only keep 10% of that on deposit or on reserves. So what they'll do is they'll take your $100, they'll take $90 out of your account without telling you, even though your account still says you have $100, they'll take that $90, they'll loan it out to somebody else, which then that person will take that $90, buy something, which will then get deposited into someone else's banking account or checking account, which then the bank will take 90% of the value of that account and then make more loans. So 100 becomes 90, 90 becomes 81, and this process continually perpetuates over and over again to the point where literally 10 times the amount of currency has been created literally out of nothing from a single $100 deposit. So I know what you're probably thinking at this point after that big long-winded explanation. So why is this even relevant to me? Well, I have a question for you. Do you like being robbed blindly and secretly taxed? Huh? Well, let me explain. Every time the banks expand the money supply, i.e., give loans out to other people, the value and purchasing power of your dollars and savings go down. And why is this, you might be asking? Because now there are more dollars chasing the same amount of goods out there in the economy. Therefore, it takes more dollars to buy the same amount of goods that it used to. This process is what is known as inflation, and as you can see here by this chart, and evidently enough, it's the same year that the Federal Reserve came into existence, which oddly, coincidence? I think not. But since 1913, the US dollar has lost more than 95 to 97% of its value since the same year that the Federal Reserve came into existence. And this is why you see the prices of goods and services every single year going up year after year after year, and why more women have been forced into the workforce because the cost of living has risen so sharply that it is almost impossible to support a family on a single income alone. You see, inflation is a secret tax that you pay without your knowledge so that the banks can profit at your expense. But here's a very important distinction that you need to understand about this entire process. Goods and services are not going up in price. It only appears that way. But what is actually happening is that the value of the currency, those pieces of paper that you carry around your pocket, the value of the currency is going down. That's why prices are going up. So over the last 10 years, the value of your home has not increased. It simply just takes more dollars to buy the same home than it used to. So this is why inflation is so insidious, because it creates the illusion of prosperity when in reality you are actually getting poorer year after year after year. And here's the really cruel joke behind all of this. What happens now is that obviously you get to work for a portion of this currency, of this money that's in the system, which then you have to pay taxes on, which then the taxes get turned over to the government, which the government then turns back over to the United States Federal Reserve System in order to pay interest on this bond that they literally created out of nothing. So, in essence, in other words, your tax dollars go to pay for interest on debt that was created out of thin air by a privately owned corporation so that they can profit at your expense. And just really think about that for a second. Really think about what that really means to you and I. And now, this entire process becomes even more incredulous when you consider the so-called reasons why the Federal Reserve was created in the first place. And to quote our good friend here, Ben Bernanke, who is the current chairman of the Federal Reserve, he says, "Our mission as set forth by the Congress is a critical one: to preserve price stability, to foster maximum employment, and to maintain moderate interest rates that serves all Americans well and fairly." So if that's the case, well, let's see how they're doing, shall we? So as he mentioned, Fed mandate number 1, price stability. In 2010, the U.S. government stated that the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI, had only increased 1.1%. Translation, that the cost of living for you and I had only gone up by 1.1% for the entire year. However, when you look at the numbers and you consult this chart, you can see that that's absolutely not the case at all. Commodity prices have been absolutely skyrocketing. Things such as wheat are up more than 74%, oats are up more than 68%, pork up more than 60%. And I realize this is from 2010, but it's pretty shocking to consider that the cost of living is rising so sharply that the government is denying this and stating that it's only risen 1.1%. So obviously this is a big colossal failure, and the Fed does not preserve price stability at all. So let's move on to the second mandate. Fed mandate number 2, maximum employment. Well, as of April 2012, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that the unemployment rate in the U.S. was 8.1%. However, what they don't tell you is that this number does not include people who have not looked for a job in more than 30 days or for people who only work part-time. Therefore, the real rate of unemployment, the real unemployment rate in the U.S. stands at over twice the stated rate by the government, and today is at over 23% and rising. And as you can see here by this chart, I mean, it's since the recession hit back in 2008, the number of people that are unemployed for more than 27 weeks or more has absolutely skyrocketed. And what's truly shocking is that back in the Great Depression, unemployment was between 24 and 25%. So being that we're at 23% today, we're essentially at Great Depression levels of unemployment. And if this trend continues, well, it's going to get much, much worse before it gets any better. So obviously, the Fed is failing pathetically in this area. So let's look at the last one here. Fed mandate number 3, moderate long-term interest rates. Well, given the size of the current level of debt that the U.S. has, interest rates cannot rise, for if they do, their interest payments on their national debt would exceed their revenues, which would cause them to default. Now, if you consider this, that over 50% of the U.S. workforce is currently employed by the government. So if the U.S. defaulted or the debt ceiling isn't raised further, this means that over half of the U.S. workforce still currently employed by the government would stop receiving a paycheck. So if you consider what that means everything from the police department, the army, the United States Postal Service, the fire departments, medical services, all these people would stop receiving a paycheck and they would no longer be compensated by the government. So if you thought the unemployment rate was bad now, well, quite frankly, you haven't seen nothing yet. Now, obviously, a default would have a catastrophic outcome and would result in the biggest economic meltdown since the Great Depression, and political and social upheaval unlike anything the world has ever seen. Fortunately, thanks to our good friend Ben Bernanke, he's promised to keep interest rates at essentially 0% until at least 2014. And as you can see here, interest rates have essentially flatlined since 2008 and have not even budged a tick. If anything, they've gone lower and lower since the recession has hit. So what does that all mean? Well, it means that your savings in your bank account will continue to earn nothing and become worth less and less each and every day. And while the government continues trying to fix the economy by racking up record amounts of new debt that you and everyone you know will be forced to subsequently pay for through your tax dollars. So I know what you're probably thinking at this point, and I'm sure you have a few questions on your mind, and this one I'm sure is right at the forefront of your mind. What's the solution? Well, like all things in life, the answer to this question is, well, it depends. As it stands today, the national debt in the U.S. is over $15.9 trillion, and this is quickly rising every single day. However, what they don't include in this number is unfunded liabilities, things such as Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicare, and the total outstanding liability just for these three facets alone is more than $120 trillion. Think about that for a second. Almost 10 times the total amount of what the U.S. currently owes in their national debt. It's incredible, don't you think? Now, obviously, this is impossible to repay back considering that the U.S. gross domestic product is only $15.2 trillion per year, and that current tax receipts collected from individuals, businesses, and corporations are only around $2.3 trillion per year. Now listen, I know these numbers are large and that politicians just throw them around as if it's nothing. But have you ever really stopped to just think how large $1 trillion really is? Well, let me give you some perspective in the form of a visual example. Now, here we have a $100 bill. Now, something a lot of people can probably relate to is just, a little piece of paper, and you carry it around to buy goods and services with. Now, this is what $10,000 looks like. Now, obviously, no great amount of math here, simply just 100 $100 bills. Now, this is what $1,000,000 looks like, which is surprising to a lot of people because, there's a lot. This is kind of the so the, what's the word I'm looking for? The symbol of success in the Western world, a millionaire, by having a net worth in excess of $1,000,000. Now, to help us with these bigger numbers that we're going to see here in a moment, I'm going to get the assistance of our friend here, Frank, to help us with some of the bigger numbers. So this is what $1,000,000 looks like. Now we're going to move to $100,000,000. So as you can see, it fits on a standard pallet, and it's about up to Frank's waist there. Now, this is what $1,000,000,000 looks like. Now, obviously, no great math here. It's simply just 10 pallets of $100,000,000. So if this is what $1,000,000,000 looks like, a trillion can't be that much more, right? Well, let's take a look here. This is what $1 trillion looks like, and this is what we're talking about when we're talking about trillions of dollars. And as you can see here, our buddy Frank is way down there, and as you'll notice, these pallets are double stacked on top of each other. And just to give you a number of, just the scope and range of how large this is, as you recall, each of those pallets is $100,000,000. So that means that that's 10,000 pallets of $100,000,000. And yet the U.S. budget, the proposed U.S. budget for 2012 is $3.79 trillion, almost 4 times that amount that I just showed you. It's incredible, just the size and scope of what these numbers really mean. Now, if you divvy it up throughout the year, $3.79 trillion for the year represents more than $10.4 billion per day. So somehow the U.S. has to find a way to just get by on only $10.4 billion a day. And what's really shocking is that they're currently borrowing between more than 40 to 45 cents out of every dollar just to pay for this and just to stay afloat. So now the question I'm sure you're all asking is, well, how the heck do we pay for this, and how can we balance the budget? Well, one of the greatest success stories over the past decades, I'm sure most of you are aware of, is the story of Apple computers. Now, in 2011, Apple Incorporated reported a federal income tax of more than $8.2 billion. So, in order to balance the budget for 2012, we would need to see the creation of more than 458 companies, the same size as Apple, generating that level of income tax just to balance the budget for 2012. Within 1 year, we need to see this happen. Likelihood of this happening? Well, I definitely like to consider myself a positive person, and I do like to believe in miracles. But I'm going to say, probably not. So now what we can do? Well, as it goes back and forth in the U.S. Congress, the Republicans are saying that, we need to cut expenses, while the Democrats are saying that in order to solve this problem, we simply just need to tax the rich and eat the rich. Well, obviously, we're going to have to cut some spending somewhere. I mean, $3.79 trillion is an incredible amount of money. So this is the U.S. federal spending for the year 2011. And what we could do in order to start cutting some of the spending is, what if we just got rid of all discretionary spending, as you can see there in the orange, which is about $646 billion. So what if we just cut all discretionary spending? Well, that would include departments such as the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Education, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Justice, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Labor, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and the Department of Energy. So if we got rid of all of this, just shut it down tomorrow, as I mentioned, that would save more than $646 billion a year. So if we just do a little arithmetic here, obviously, we still have more than $3.1 trillion left to pay in the budget, even though we cut out more than, a little over, just about 650 billion off the budget. So, obviously that's what the Republicans' argument was. So let's look at the Democrat side of things. Surely if we taxed all the rich people out there, then that would solve all our problems, right? This is what Michael Moore is a huge preacher of, and as if you ever seen his documentary, Capitalism: A Love Story, his position is that all we need to do is just tax those rich people in order to bring equality to America. And I mean, this was really the standpoint of the big movement, Occupy Wall Street, is that, we are the 99% and that we need to eat the rich and take everything that they have, so to speak. So, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the number of households currently in the United States stands at around 117 million. But of these households, only around 2% of them earn an income in excess of more than $250,000 per year, which is what Obama considers the rich and the affluent in this country. So if we do a little math, 2% of 117 million is 2.3 million households. So if we took all the income of all these families, all these households that made an income in excess of $250,000, well, that would give us a total income of more than $1.363 trillion. Now we're talking, right? That should make a pretty good dent in the budget, right? Well, if we do a little bit of math here, we're going to see that, even after all that, the U.S. still owes $1.781 trillion left to pay off the budget. Okay, obviously there's got to be something else we got to do here, and let's get serious. There has to be some more money out there that we can use to pay the bills, right? Well, what if we took all the profits from all the companies on the Fortune 500? And these are the 500 most successful companies. They're the largest companies that generate the most revenues and profits. So what if we took all the profits from these 500 companies? Well, in 2011, that number amounted to more than $613 billion. So if we took all those profits from these companies and used it to pay the budget, well, even after all of that, we still have another 1.1 trillion left to pay. Are you starting to see how large this problem is? How large this budget is to pay down? Well, it looks like we're going to have to start getting a little creative here. So what could we do next? I mean, we've already slashed discretionary spending out of the budget. We've taken all the income from the wealthiest households. We took all the profits from the largest corporations. What can we do next? Well, according to the Forbes 400, all the billionaires in the U.S. have a combined net worth of over $1.4 trillion. So what if we were able to somehow arrange a few accidental fall down the stairs and collected a 100% estate tax from all the billionaires on the Forbes 400? Well, if we have 1.1 trillion left to pay, if we just took everything the rich have, we just ate the rich and took every last dime and penny that they have, well, that would give us a surplus of 232 billion. Well, as you can recall, if it costs 10.4 billion to run the government a day, well, even though we have this surplus, that's only going to last the U.S. about 22 days in 2013, even though we have a surplus of more than 232 billion. So, I'm sure the question you have on your mind is at this point in the presentation is this: what happens next? We've grinded and slashed all discretionary spending out of the budget. We've taken all the profits, all the salaries, all the assets, and all the holdings of the rich, and we've liquidated the largest corporations, and that only gets the U.S. by for 1 year. Now what do we do? When you no longer have companies generating revenues and individuals earning salaries, then there isn't anything available for taxation to fund the government. Yet the U.S. Congress is proposing that they spend another $3.8 trillion in 2013. And somehow, magically, by spending even more, Obama's proposing that the deficit for 2012 is going to be only $900 billion, when in all actuality, it's going to be around 1.3 trillion. What's, just a couple $100 billion off the actual target. And this is proposing that they're going to have revenues of more than 2.9 trillion. Well, where are you going to get revenues from when you kill off all the private enterprise, all the private capital, and hose the rich down to nothing? Based on what you've just seen, it's very clear that the U.S. economy is on some very shaky legs. And even by the most conservative calculations or accounting standards, they are already bankrupt. However, in a last-ditch effort to keep the music going a little longer, the U.S. has a unique ability that no other country in the world currently has. And that's their ability to simply light up the printing presses and to print money. Now, because the U.S. is still the world's reserve currency, they are the only debtor nation in the world who can legally print U.S. dollars, which means that the U.S. government can't go broke in any imagination of the word, because they can simply print more money to pay for their bad debts. So in other words, America is the only country in the world that doesn't have to pay for its debts or imports with the foreign currency. And this is a huge advantage that they have in their economy. So to explain what this means and just to show you the power behind this, let's say, for example, that Australia wanted to buy some oil from Saudi Arabia. Well, Australia can't exchange their Aussie dollars in order to buy oil. What they first have to do is they first have to go to, well, not literally go to the United States, but they first have to exchange their Aussie dollars for the US dollar in order to buy the oil that they need. Because the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, therefore all commodities in the world are priced in US dollars. So because of this, the value of the Aussie dollar is very important to Australians. And if they don't produce at least as much as they consume, the value of their dollar will go down, which will cause the standard of living to decrease in their country. But in America, they can consume as much as they wish without any concern about acquiring the money to pay for it, because their dollars are accepted everywhere in the world. So if it still isn't making sense, in plain English, America hasn't had to produce or export anything in order to buy goods from other nations that they required, because all they had to do was simply borrow and print more money. And to quote Alan Greenspan, who was the former chairman right before Ben Bernanke took power, he says that the United States can pay any debt that it has because it can always print more money, so there is zero chance of default. So if this is the case, then is there really anything that we need to be worried about? Is there anything that we need to be concerned about? Well, rather than drawing any conclusions prematurely, let's investigate the results of this type of action and policy in play in another country who has tried it before. And this is where I come to the example where I compare America to the African country Zimbabwe. Now, in February 2006, Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe directed the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe to print more than $20.5 trillion in order to buy foreign currency to pay off debt that they owed to the International Monetary Fund. Now, because of the rapid expansion in their money supply and because the supply of goods had not changed, once this money found its way into their economy, retail prices on consumer goods began to absolutely skyrocket. And as you can see here, this is, shirts and food priced in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, as citizens began to revolt in response to these actions taken by their government, the Zimbabwean government responded by printing an additional $60 trillion so that they could pay for a 300% salary increase for their military and law enforcement in order to keep the citizens in line and in check. Now, what's quite interesting is that they passed, as I mentioned, in Zimbabwe here, they paid for a 300% increase, 3x the compensation for the public workers versus the private sector. Well, in the U.S. here, the average public sector worker, the average person that works for the government, makes more than twice the salary, if you include wages and benefits, than that of the person in the private sector in the U.S. economy. So, definitely some similarities there. Now, in July of 2007, Mugabe implemented price controls which forced stores and shops to sell their goods and services at government-mandated prices. Yet prices still continued to rise. As food and other basic consumer goods became more and more impossible to afford, this led the nation to complete chaos. Anyone that did not own gold or silver for barter was forced to feed themselves by a breadline or starve. Now, failing to see the connection between money supply and prices, Mugabe's solution to the nation's challenges was to simply print more money. And by February of 2008, the total Zimbabwe money supply reached a staggering $800 trillion. Now, by this point, the nation was deep in the grip of what is known as hyperinflation, and by July of 2008, just 6 months later, it cost more than $100 billion just to buy 3 chicken eggs. And according to research that was done from Professor Steve Hank from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, by the end of 2008, just 5 months later, Zimbabwe's annual inflation rate was, get this, 89.7 sextillion%. That's 21 zeros. Now, this meant that prices in the Zimbabwean economy doubled every 24.7 hours. And by April of 2009, just a few months later, the Zimbabwean currency was declared dead and completely worthless. Now, if you're thinking that this all sounds like doom and gloom or fear-mongering and that hyperinflation could never happen in the U.S., just keep in mind that hyperinflation has already happened in over 30 countries in the last 100 years alone. And here's just a few of them. We have Argentina, Austria, Belarus in 2011, Brazil, China, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Mexico, Peru, the Philippines, Poland, Romania, the USSR, Taiwan, the Ukraine, Yugoslavia, as we mentioned, Zimbabwe, and it has already happened twice in the US during the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. So where are we today in this process, and what are our options that we have to work with? Well, since Lehman Brothers went bankrupt in September of 2008, and which really triggered the financial crisis, the Federal Reserve has been doing everything in their power trying to prevent the economy from undergoing deflation, i.e. a contraction in the money supply, because that would absolutely destroy a debt-based economy like we have today and send our economy into the next Great Depression. Now remember, in order for us to enjoy the same levels of prosperity that we have today, we have to continually go deeper and deeper into debt each and every year, or the entire system will collapse. So really this kind of this puts the Fed, puts them between a rock and a hard place, because they really only have 2 options at their disposal. Number one, they can default on the debt, which would send the economy into another Great Depression, or they can simply just print more money and kick the can down the road, so to speak. Now, given the unimaginable pain that option 1 would cause for the U.S. economy, the Fed has decided to opt for the path of least resistance and to choose the latter. And just how much money have they been printing exactly? Well, all I need to do is to show you one chart, which is absolutely breathtaking. Now, as you can see here, up until 2008, it took from 1913 until 2008, it took just about 100 years to create about $825 billion in the U.S. economy. But since the financial crisis had started, the Fed has created more than 300% more dollars in existence in the last 48 months than has been created in the last 100 years, and has tripled the monetary base from $825 billion to a little more than $2.7 trillion. Now, this is rapidly reducing the value of your savings, because with each new dollar that is borrowed into existence, the value of the dollars currently in circulation go down. And for those who live outside the U.S. and think their country is immune from any of the consequences of these actions, keep in mind that because the U.S. dollar is still the world's reserve currency, all commodities around the world are still priced in U.S. dollars. So if the U.S. decides to devalue the currency, which as you can see by the chart, that's exactly what they've decided to do, every single nation in the world will be forced to devalue their currencies against the U.S. dollar, because if they don't, their currency will rise in value against the dollar, which would cause their export markets to decline and cause deflation in their economy. Now, this is what is known as a currency war, when it's a perpetual race to the bottom, where countries race to debase their currencies against one another in order to prevent their currencies from appreciating against one another so that they can continue to have a strong export market. Now, unfortunately, the end result of this is always hyperinflation, which will cause the prices of food, energy, and other basic consumer goods to absolutely skyrocket in price, which will bankrupt anyone that has their wealth and savings denominated in a fiat currency. Now, I didn't share all of this today. Didn't share all of this today to frighten you at all, but rather to really show you what's going on right now in the global economy, and that the mathematical inevitable collapse of the US dollar is something that could either leave you high and dry and completely bankrupt, or something that you can capitalize on and position yourself to be on the winning side of what is going to be the biggest opportunity in your lifetime to become exceptionally wealthy. So now for this portion of the presentation, now that we've made it through the pain, I'm going to show you how you can take advantage and capitalize on this opportunity, because right now you really only have one of two choices to make. Number one, you can do nothing and hope and pray that the government solves these problems and saves you and takes care of you and your family. Or you can prepare and educate yourself to take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to become very, very wealthy. Now, as I mentioned at the start of this presentation, obviously I'm not a licensed financial advisor, so therefore I cannot and will not tell you what you should do with your money. Now, the onus is on you to make those decisions. All I can do is point you in the right direction and show you the incredible opportunity that is sitting right before your very eyes. And this is where the presentation starts to get fun, because now we're going to go to the case study where I'm going to show you how you could have taken a one-time investment of $10,000 and transformed it into literally more than $100 million. Now, in order to understand how this money was made and how it was possible, you need to understand something very important about the economy. The economy moves in cycles and trends, and during certain times, certain asset classes significantly outperform other asset classes and experience massive gains in purchasing power. Now, in the 70s, when Richard Nixon took everyone off the gold standard, precious metals like gold and silver had a massive bull market, which we saw the price of gold rise from $35 to $850, or have gains of more than 2,300%, or silver saw a rise from around $1.39 to more than $52.50, or experience gains of more than 3,600%. So, if you took that $10,000 investment and put it solely into silver, well, your $10,000 would have grown to more than $367,000 in a span of only 9 years. It gets better, because after this bull market ceased and it was finished, the next bull market that we saw was in the stock market, where we saw an incredible run in equities. Now, from the 1980s to the early 2000s, the stock market had a major bull market, and particularly in the NASDAQ, on the NASDAQ index, where internet stocks were all the rage. And as you can see here, the NASDAQ index fund gained more than 3,500% during that time. So if you took your winnings that you had achieved from investing in silver, and then you placed it in a NASDAQ index fund and rode it all the way up, well, your $367,000 would have grown to more than just about $14 million. It gets better, because after that tech bubble burst and all these internet companies went bankrupt, then all that wealth transferred once again, and now it's still currently in the bull market that we're having today. Now, a lot of people are going to say that we had a big real estate bull market, which is true. I'm not going to deny that. But the asset class that has actually gained the most in purchasing power, well, it actually went back to gold and silver once again. And those two metals bottomed, as you can see here, in the early 2000s. Gold bottomed at around $255 and silver just a little over $4. So if you took your $14 million and you invested back in silver once again, and you wrote it up to the current price of around $30 or so, well, you would have seen gains of more than 625%, which means your 14 million would have grown to a little over $100 million. Now, I know what a lot of you are probably thinking. You're probably thinking, well, Mike, there's what you did here, there's absolutely no way an individual would be able to time at the very bottom and get out at the very top, and there's no way that this could ever possibly happen. Well, obviously it's impossible to know exactly where the bull markets are going to end, and as they say, hindsight is 20/20. But what if we were able to educate you on this wealth principle, wealth cycles, and show you exactly which asset classes would be performing the best in certain times of the economy? Would that not be a very valuable thing to know, even if you only saw 50% of the gains that we saw here, or even 10% of the gains? Would that not be a valuable thing to know? And now I'm sure what a lot of you are probably asking, is it too late to get involved in precious metals today? Well, personally, I cannot make that decision for you. However, at this point, I will tell you I'm still currently buying as much metal as I possibly can, and that through the research I've done, we're only in phase 2 or 3 of this bull market, and the biggest gains are still to be had. Now, recently, CEO of goldsilver.com, Michael Maloney, has made the case for $15,000 to $20,000 an ounce gold and $1,500 to $2,000 an ounce silver. How is this possible, you might be asking? Well, as bankrupt countries and governments become more and more desperate trying to fund their operations, they begin to steal the wealth of their citizens. They begin to steal the wealth and purchasing power of their citizens by debasing and diluting the money supply through inflation. As citizens begin to feel the effects of these actions by the result of rising prices, they begin to suspect that something isn't right. They begin to feel a loss of their purchasing power as common everyday items become more and more expensive. However, as this process continues, something miraculous happens. Through the free market system, the will of the public causes gold and silver and other commodities to automatically revalue as they rush back into precious metals in order to retain their purchasing power. This accounts for all the currency that had been created since the last revaluation. So, as I showed you earlier with this chart, in order for gold to back all the dollars that the Federal Reserve has created, in order to account for all that currency, according to Michael Maloney, gold has to rise to a price of more than $15,000 to $20,000 an ounce to back every single dollar that has been created. And it gets better than that, because throughout history, the gold to silver ratio, which is simply a measure of how many ounces of silver it takes to buy 1 ounce of gold, has historically been between 12 to 1 or 16 to 1, which means it takes 12 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold, or 16 ounces to buy 1 ounce of gold. However, due to metal price manipulation by investment and bullion banks, the prices of both gold and silver have been artificially suppressed to the point, or due to the banks leasing out their physical metals at a rate of around 45 to 1, upwards of 100 to 1, which simply means that for every 1 ounce that they have in physical inventory, they've sold the right or the contract of that physical ounce upwards to 100 other people. So as a result, the gold to silver ratio today is around 55 to 1, which means it takes around 55 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold. So if the gold to silver ratio went back to a 10 to 1 ratio, well, if gold went to $15,000 an ounce, that means silver would rise to over $1,500 an ounce. And if you think that seems impossible, keep this in mind. For the first time in history, there is less investable grade silver available than gold. And as you can see here by this chart, inventories around the world have been absolutely plummeting. And to the point where if every single person in the world was to go and invest in an ounce of either gold or silver, there would only be 1/3 of an ounce of gold available for people to buy, and only 1/14 of an ounce of silver to buy if everyone in the world today went to go and try to buy 1 ounce. So that just gives you an idea of how rare these metals truly are. And the reason why this is so is because of this simple principle. gold is hoarded and silver is consumed. Silver is one of the most valuable commodities that we have on the planet today. It's used in everything from CDs, solar panels, cell phones, computers, all kinds of medical applications for its antimicrobial purposes. It has over 10,000 industrial uses, and this number is quickly rising year after year after year, which is putting more and more constraints on the supply. Not only that, but the bull market that we experienced in the 1970s, when you consider how much gold and silver rose in price, when you consider the type of bull market that was there, the only nations that could participate in this bull market was essentially North America and Western Europe. You had major economies that could not participate. You had Russia, you had China, you had India, you had all throughout South America, and today all of these countries have billionaires in them that could easily all come in and start chasing the gains that are going to be had in this market. So I mean, nowadays you literally have the entire world that is able to participate and invest in this market. So let's do a little bit of math here. So you have 10 times the amount of people that can participate in the market, times 10 times the amount of currency chasing these gains, times 10 times the amount of people that have the investor mindset, that have the mentality of an investor. Well, therefore, obviously I'm not going to say this is guaranteed because I literally can't do that, but the gains that are to be had are going to be absolutely enormous for people that get in today at the current prices. However, now that I've just shared all this with you, and now that you're in the know, this is the most important part of the entire presentation. What are you going to do next? It is clear that based on what I just shared with you, the time to act is right now. It's not next week, it's not next month, because with each passing day, the window of opportunity grows smaller and smaller, and the risks of inaction grow larger and larger. And right now, the stakes are simply too high for you to do nothing and hope that these problems will just go away. And to quote my mentor, Anthony Robbins, he's always said that if you continue to do what you've always done, you'll continue to get what you've always got. And for me, the message has been loud and clear. If you continue to hand your money over to a financial advisor that continues to say, just invest for the long term in a diversified portfolio of mutual funds in your retirement account, then you're going to get slaughtered like the rest of the middle class. And to be blunt, you'd have to be an absolute fool to hand your money over to anyone in that industry again who does not understand the risks that are happening in the global economy today. Now, as I mentioned at the start of this presentation, it is my mission to help as many people as possible to prepare for this crisis and to show people how to invest their money the way the rich and the wealthy do so that you can create the financial freedom and prosperity that you deserve. Because here's the bottom line. If you want to achieve the results that the wealthy achieve, you have to model and emulate what the wealthy are doing. I mean, it should be simple enough, right? I mean, you wouldn't take financial advice from somebody that is broke. Obviously, if you want to achieve those results, you have to follow and do what the rich do. Now, in order to do that, there are essentially three things that you need in order to transition from middle-class mediocrity into the world of the wealthy. Number one, you need inside information from people that are in the know and that understand what is going on and that understand how to invest in this environment. Number two, you need the education and discipline to implement the information you receive once we educate you on it. And finally, you need access to the people and the contacts that can facilitate these transactions to make this transition for you possible. You don't need to be an expert in any area of wealth or investing management. You just need to know the people that are and then build a team around you so that they can help you make this transition. Now, I realize that if you're just starting out or even if you are a seasoned veteran, this could seem like a bit of an odyssey because you're not sure of where to go, who to talk to, or even who to trust to get the right advice and the right guidance. Well, that's why I created the Abundance Society, to help bring these people and to help bring these resources to you. Now, The Abundance Society is a private membership site where each month we scan the globe to find the best opportunities, people, and companies to help you build your wealth. Now, I realize that may sound a little tongue-in-cheek considering I'm sure you've been exposed to other so-called financial gurus who claim that they had all the answers. Well, the difference is the people and the resources that I'm going to bring to you inside of the Abundance Society are people that have already built a substantial amount of wealth and are those who truly walk their talk. So this isn't going to be some regurgitation of old, outdated financial theory or business advice that doesn't work anymore in today's new economy, but rather it is going to be a deep dive, in-depth experience where we will take you by the hand and show you step by step exactly how to build massive wealth with the tools, strategies, and techniques that are working right now. For example, did you know that there's an investment strategy that the ultra-rich use that enables them to retire 100% tax-free, and that is completely legal? Not only that, but this strategy allows you to collect a stable return of around 6 to 10% per year. The principal is not susceptible to the stock market volatility, which means that the principal amount in the account will never go down in value, even if the market crashes to zero. It gives you the ability to pull money out anytime you want without penalty. It gives you the ability. There's no limit to how much you can invest in this vehicle, unlike traditional retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs. And it allows you to be your own bank so that you can earn the interest on large purchases such as cars, homes, and other big purchases such as, a boat. And this is just a few of the benefits that you get by using this strategy. How is this possible, you might be asking? Well, we'll teach you that inside of the Abundance Society. Not only that, but we're going to give you and show you the resources on where we buy our precious metals, what kind we buy, where we store it, and when and where we'll be selling it. All I can say is that you should not buy any precious metals if you're not actively invested right now until you have this information first. Way too many scams out there, way too many people that'll try to sell you overvalued numismatic coins, and it's just you need to know this information before you get involved. Not only that, but you're going to learn things such as how to buy and sell cash flow apartment complexes in commercial real estate like the rich do. You're going to learn how to play the tax game like the rich do so you can keep much more of your money and have it work for you. You're going to learn how to diversify your assets overseas to protect yourself from coming capital controls like the rich do. You're going to learn how to invest internationally and how to protect and monitor your international holdings like the rich do. You're going to learn how to invest in the stock market the right way and learn how to become both a trader and an investor, because based on different economic environments, you need to have both skill sets if you want to prosper in the stock market. We're going to teach you how to buy and sell and even start businesses if you're so inclined like the rich do. And if you are a business owner, we're going to teach you how to grow, manage, and develop your business so that you can take control of your time and take control of your life like the rich do. You're going to learn how to properly systematize your business by setting up the proper controls and systems to scale your business growth. And you're going to learn how to hire the right people to run your business for you and how to manage them correctly and properly like the rich do. And this is only a fraction of what you're going to learn inside of the Abundance Society. We're going to lift the veil and give you the knowledge and skills you need in order to create massive wealth for you and your family in this new economy, so that you are empowered to completely change your financial position in life so that you can create a life of abundance. And the best part of all, we're going to do this together in a way that is very pragmatic, very simple to understand, and very easy to implement. All while having the direct guidance and mentorship of those who have already built their fortunes and created their fortunes. Individuals that I've developed relationships with who are literally worth millions and millions of dollars. They're going to sit down and they're going to reveal to you their mindsets, attitudes, and beliefs about money that enable them to achieve and maintain their financial success. They're going to show you the investment opportunities and business growth strategies that are working right now so you can protect and even grow your money even in these chaotic times. And they're going to show you this is the most important point of all. They're going to show you how you can utilize your wealth so that together that we can make a massive impact in other people's lives and make a real difference in humanity. And we're going to document this entire process inside of the Abundant Society membership site via online videos, conference calls, interviews, and weekly newsletters, which you'll have instant access to today once you become a member. And no matter what financial position you might currently find yourself in, the Abundant Society is going to give you the answers you need and guide you through these chaotic times with ease and precision. So if you want to join us along this adventure, I only have one more thing left to address, and it is simply this: that you take and claim ownership over your financial destiny. You know, we have zero tolerance for complainers, for whiners, or for people that just want to blame others for their problems. We consciously seek to embetter ourselves and surround ourselves with positive people who want to go to the next level and want to help make a real difference in humanity. So if you think you fit that profile, then you're welcome to join our community. That's it. That's the only criteria you need to follow. Now, as for the tuition and for your investment, if you aren't accustomed to private membership sites or newsletters in the investing and business development arena, I can tell you right now that they are not cheap. The cost on the majority of them ranges between $2,000 and $10,000 per year, with some of them as much as $25,000 per year, and in some cases much, much more than that. Now, obviously, my goal with the Abundant Society is to get this information into the hands of many people as possible. So for you, I've created two options. The first option is our standard membership for the Abundant Society, which is $197 a month. Now, that's only $6 per day, which quite frankly is considerably less than most people spend on their daily hit of Starbucks. Now, if you think that sounds expensive, don't worry, because I'm going to show you how you can get your membership for free the moment you join the Abundance Society today. So here's what you're going to get by joining the Abundance Society today. So first and foremost, I'm going to give you an Abundance Society membership, which is a $2,364 value for the entire year. I'm going to give you weekly updates and newsletters that break down the critical events that are happening in the economy so that you stay abreast of the changes and so that you're aware of exactly what we're going to be doing next in our investment portfolio and how you can take advantage of the coming changes in the economy so you can maximize your returns. So that is a $47 value. Next, we're going to give you lifetime lesson updates. So if there's any changes in regulations or laws from the government, we will update those lessons within our site completely free of charge for you once you become a member today, which is a $97 value. Not only that, but I'm going to give you access to my Rolodex of resources and contacts, which is easily worth the cost of membership alone. And these are the people that are going to help you make that transition from middle-class mediocrity into the world of the wealthy. And this easily is a $597 value, which you'll have access to today once you become a member. So that brings the total value of this offering to more than $3,105. But you're not going to pay anywhere close to that once you become a member today. So if you take action right here, right now on this presentation, I'm going to offer you a massive 65% discount and cut the price of membership to only $67 a month. Why am I doing this? Because you took the time to attend this entire presentation, which tells me that you're serious about your financial future. And those are the kind of people that I want to be surrounded with inside of the Abundance Society. People that are committed to going to the next level in their lives and people that are committed to making that next step. Now that's only $2.25 a day for information and contacts that are going to help you completely change your financial position in life and help you create the lifestyle that you've always desired. Now the second option is our annual membership. So if you commit yourself to joining our community for an entire year, I'm going to provide you a 12-month membership, which as I mentioned is a $2,364 value, for a single payment of only $397 for the entire year. Now this represents an incredible 85% discount off of the normal price, and it brings down the equivalent monthly price down from $197 to $67, all the way down to $33 per month. Now, obviously, I want you to join for a full year because that's how you're going to get the best value for your money, which is why I'm offering such a large discount on the annual membership. Now, please understand that this special offer is not available anywhere else and that this discount is only available right now during this presentation. Now, like all of our offerings and products and services that we offer, this offering for the Abundant Society membership comes with a 30-day, no questions asked, 100% money back guarantee. So, if you don't feel that this is the best investment you've ever made in your financial education to help you to create the financial abundance that you deserve, and if you don't feel that your membership is worth multiple times your original investment, then let either myself or our team know within the first 30 days of your membership, and we will gladly give you back all of your money, and there will be no hard feelings between you and I. Really. So if you dig into the material and decide that the Abundant Society isn't right for you, just simply head to our support desk and request a no questions asked refund. Because here's the bottom line. This means you have absolutely nothing to lose. Either you're blown away by what you learn and it helps you create financial freedom in the coming months and years ahead, or you don't pay a penny. It's that simple. But listen, I want you to be absolutely 100% certain with your decision the moment you become a member today. Because I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of people out there that are just trying to, scam you or trying to make money off you and really not provide any value for your hard-earned dollars in return. So here's what I'm prepared to do. For the next 7 days, I'm going to give you complete and total access to the Abundance Society, regardless of the membership option that you select here today, for only $1. Yes, you heard me right, for $1. Now, why am I doing this? Because I want you to see and experience what it is like to be a member before you make the investment, so that you know without a shadow of a doubt that the Abundant Society is the real deal and that it can help you create the financial freedom that you deserve in your life today. I mean, let's face it, you've struggled long enough and hard enough trying to figure out how to create financial freedom in your life on your own. You've probably bounced around from book to book, course to course, and seminar after seminar trying to figure this stuff out on your own. And all that's probably happened is that you have all this information and you have no idea what to do with it because you have no context on how to actually go about applying any of it. So all that's happened is that you've gotten frustrated and that you're just completely overwhelmed and have no idea what to do. And I know that this is true because I've experienced in my own life, and I know just how frustrating this can be. And as Einstein said, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. And I mean, let's face it, if you don't join today, well, then tomorrow, then the results are going to be the exact same for you, or potentially worse based on the current economic trends that are playing out right now as we speak. And I mean, let's face it, you're smart enough to succeed financially. You're good enough to make this transition happen in your life. What we need to do is to construct a crystal clear plan that is customized to you, because there is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Then what we need to do is shut out all the noise that is distracting you and help you clarify and focus your vision and on your version of what a sensational life looks like, and give you a clear and actionable roadmap that will take you in the direction you want to go so that you can reach complete and total financial freedom. And that's exactly what our team can provide to you the moment you decide to become a member today. So for the next week, you can try us out for $1, go through the content, and decide whether or not the Abundant Society is right for you. Now, just so you know that this $1 offer for the 7-day trial period applies to both membership options. So regardless if you choose the monthly subscription for $67 a month or the annual tuition of $397 per year. So this discount applies to both membership options. So, if you stick with us after the 7-day trial period, then we will commence with standard billing on whichever membership option suits you best. So if you haven't done so already, select the membership option that suits you best. Click the button below this presentation that says Add to Cart. And then from there, fill out the one-page order form, and then click the button that says Submit My Order. From there, you'll receive a confirmation email with your login details so that you can get immediate access to the Abundance Society and begin going through the content and lessons available. I'm incredibly excited to see you on the inside of the Abundance Society so that my team and I can help you create the financial abundance that you desire and that you deserve. Now, just remember this. The current economic times are nothing to fear if you have the right information, the right guidance, and the right plan to help you navigate through them effectively and efficiently. So that being said, thank you so much for joining the Abundance Society today. I had a lot of fun creating this presentation for you. As I mentioned, my name is Michael Stead. I'm the founder and creator of the Abundance Society, and I cannot wait to help you take your life to the next level and to help you build the financial abundance that you so deserve in your life. So just remember that this is your only opportunity to get access to the Abundance Society for the $1 offer for the 7-day trial period, so make sure you would take advantage of it right now. Click the button below to get started right now, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you for coming to the webinar today, and we'll be talking with you guys real soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.